As promised, we are joined in the 11 o'clock hour on the Allen Stiles Show, Sactown Sports. We are joined by the one, the only, Brett Siegel, covers the NBA for Clutch Points. Brett, great friend of the show, and we got to have Brett in person out there in Vegas. And work hasn't stopped since, even though we were having a good time in Vegas. It was still hard work, and now Brett is back at work putting out a ton of great stuff on Jonathan Kuminga and more. Brett, happy Friday. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Allen. How's it going, man?
I'm good, man. I cannot complain. There might be some complaints from Kings fans based on what the Kings might want to give up to acquire Jonathan Kuminga. Brett, we read your article and some of the excerpts of it. Great stuff. If you haven't read it, check that out on Clutch Points to all the listeners and viewers out there. Brett, one thing I'm not struggling with, but trying to figure out, but who actually has the leverage right now when you talk about, and we can leave the Kings out of it for a second, just between Jonathan Kuminga and the Warriors? Because at some point you got Al Horford in limbo, DeAnthony Melton in limbo, Seth Curry in some type of limbo as well. They're the only team that haven't made any transactions. You go to NBA.com and it just says NA. Who actually has the leverage as of 11:01 a.m. Pacific time?
It's tough because there's so much that goes into this of different stipulations with restricted free agents. And obviously we had the whole sign and trade scenarios with Jonathan Kuminga. But right now, given where every team is at in free agency and given where some teams that were interested in him kind of moved in other directions, the Kings being one of them after doing the sign and trade with Dennis Schroeder. But when you look at the leverage with Jonathan Kuminga and the Warriors, I'd probably have to say it's 2/3 in the Warriors' favor. And the only reason I say that is, A, there's not a market for Kuminga, so he can want to play anywhere else. The bottom line is he can't just go play anywhere else. The Warriors basically have control over any team that's going to try to sign him to an offer sheet. They can just bring him back and then look to flip him or play him or whatever they want to do. So that's kind of the first third. The second third in favor of the Warriors is the fact that the sign and trade market hasn't developed. So there's no trade that you can really do for him that makes sense from the Warriors perspective. There's teams out there that will trade for him. Let me rephrase this. Mm-hmm. If the Suns and the Kings, for example, their offers were in to the Warriors and those trades could have been agreed upon. It's just Golden State didn't want what they were offering. So it's not that there aren't teams that are interested in Kuminga. It's that those teams that are can't just sign him to an outright offer sheet. And then, so they have to go through the sign and trade, but the Warriors don't like what they're getting offered. So that's where they have the leverage in this scenario. The only third and the small percentage in which Kuminga has a little bit of leverage is that he can threaten to sign that qualifying offer. And if he does so, it's for 1 year, $7.9 million. He gets a full no trade clause. But why would he actually do this? Because if Kuminga signs that qualifying offer, he's locking himself into 1 year with the Warriors for significantly less money than he wants. And he knows what his role is going to be. He's not going to be a starter. He's not going to be a featured player. And if he screws over the Warriors like that, well, why would they help him by actually playing him and upping his value to the point where he's just going to leave as an unrestricted free agent? It would just be a very messy scenario because you can go back and forth and point so many fingers if you're Kuminga. You can point fingers if you're the Warriors. And at this point, we're kind of just in a holding pattern waiting to see which side blinks first.
So, and talking to Brett Siegel here, NBA writer for Clutch Points. So as far as the short-term deal is concerned, Brett, do you know how far apart? Do you know what maybe has been offered to Jonathan Kuminga? And to what you said in the last question that I asked you, are the Warriors just essentially saying, yeah, we don't think you're going to sign the qualifying offer, and whether we're offering you 18 a year for 3 years, we think you're eventually just going to sign that 18 for a year for 3 years or 2 years and a player option, and then we'll just move you in December?
Yeah, I think that there is a little bit of calling bluff on the qualifying offer simply because it hasn't worked with restricted free agency in the past. We've seen guys take the qualifying offer to bet on themselves, and it just has not worked out. And obviously things go south with where they are in their situation. So there's talk of that right now that, oh, he could be the one restricted free agent to take that qualifying offer. I'm not buying that right now based on what I'm hearing. The Warriors, they want him back, and they do have plans to play him if he is back. But the overarching scenario is that you bring Kuminga back on a short-term contract. Maybe it's like a 2-year, $45 million deal where he gets paid $22 million, $23 million to be with the Warriors, and then he gets flipped. And that's basically where we're at this point, because the sign and trade market, it hasn't developed for the Warriors. We talked about those two teams just really briefly. I mentioned them with the Suns, the Kings, and obviously Shams Charania of ESPN reported on them yesterday. But the thing about those packages is that you're most likely going to need to get another team involved, because the Warriors don't want to take back long-term salary. I know me and you have mentioned from the Kings' perspective, Malik Monk, well, he's still under contract for 3 more years. And while he's a player that could fit in well with what the Warriors need, it's just the money's the issue. And it's the same thing with Grayson Allen from the Phoenix Suns. So if those are the main guys that you're going to be offering up in a sign and trade, you're going to have to get another team involved to take on that contract. And at that point, well, there's no teams that can take on those contracts this late in free agency. And the other side too is, why would they want to help the Warriors in this situation and give up a player that they really like? So that's kind of where we're at. And that's why I say, if you bring Kuminga back on a short-term contract and you can flip them in January or before the trade deadline in February, there's a lot more optionality. There's a lot more teams that I think would be engaged in those conversations, simply because there's going to be dead contracts by the middle of the year. There's going to be teams looking to tank, and there's going to be teams that are going to be wanting a 22, 23-year-old high-flying athletic wing and forward that presents a lot of upside for the future.
That takes us right into the Kings side of this, Brett, talking to Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. Go check out his latest article on Jonathan Kuminga and Siegel Scoops that continues to come out with a lot of great information beyond Jonathan Kuminga. Is the lack of interest in Malik Monk based on the base year compensation rules, or is it just a fit and, to your point, a contract thing, right? I guess what I'm asking is, if this were to, let's say Kuminga today signs that, what'd you say, 2 years, $45 million, would the Warriors then be maybe interested in Malik Monk in December, where it's just contract to contract? Or is it just more of, we just don't think this is a great contract that we want to be a part of, irregardless of the base year compensation rules that are applying right now?
From my understanding, it's the latter. And it's just, they don't want to be tied down to money past 2 years. And the main reason for that, from the Warriors' perspective, is that they've put themselves on this 2-year window where Curry has 2 more years left on his contract. Butler has 2 years. Draymond has 2 years with the player option. Steve Kerr's contract runs out at the same time. So basically what you're looking at is, in 2027, you can have the ability to figure out what your future looks like. Obviously, you're not going to be moving Steph Curry. You're not going to be moving Draymond, assuming that they don't retire by then. But you can restructure their deals and really reevaluate your team. And when there's max cap space available with a player like Butler potentially being a free agent, maybe you can then go out and pursue Giannis as a free agent if he's still with the Bucks at that point, because there's been tons of speculation, even since you could go back to like 2019, 2020, that Joe Lacob and the Warriors want to find a way to bring Giannis Antetokounmpo to San Francisco. So it's a little bit of that. They want to keep their options open monetarily. And then when you look at the base compensation rule, Malik Monk is making around $18.8 million this year.
Right.
So when you're sending an outgoing salary with Kuminga in a sign and trade, it's half of the salary that he's going to be signing for that year. So if Jonathan Kuminga is at $20 million, for example, that's a $10 million outgoing salary for the Warriors. They can only take back that amount without running into financial and cap problems there. So that's kind of where it lies with the Kings and the Malik Monk contract. It's not necessarily that he wouldn't be a player that could fit in, because from my personal viewpoint, I think that he could kind of fill those holes that Jordan Poole left behind, it being a 6th man off the bench for them, being a really good scorer in the backcourt behind Steph Curry. It's just the fact that that contract doesn't fit the timeline that they put together for themselves, with 2 max contracts on their roster already, and then Draymond Green making around $26 million. The only way that could work is if there is another team that comes involved. I just don't see a scenario right now in which the Golden State Warriors would want to add Malik Monk to their roster.
Talking to Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. So, Brett, first it started with Devin Carter 2 seconds, and Dario Saric. Now it's moved to Devin Carter, Dario Saric, and a protected first. I'm going back and forth with Warriors fans. I'm going back and forth with Kings fans. I look at Devin Carter and I say this is a lottery pick from a year ago. Yeah, he didn't play much and there were injuries, but the Kings are saying here is a future-focused package with Devin Carter, a protected first, and Dario Saric, who is familiar with your system and had some good moments within your system a couple years ago. Devin Carter could still be an impact player for you this season as well. He can defend and he can shoot the three ball a little bit. When it comes to Devin Carter, what is the interest level with the Warriors? Or do they simply not want Devin Carter? How do they view Devin Carter?
Yeah, I don't think that his value right now is where Kings fans put it necessarily. And the main reason for that is because he hasn't played much. And obviously, when you look at his performance in Summer League, we still need to see more from him. And I think that that's why this is a big year two for him in the league. He's going to have opportunity to play with the Kings, given their backcourt situation. He's a combo guard. He can defend. And when he's healthy, I think that he can make an impact. But that's the question mark because he wasn't healthy during his rookie season. We need to see more product from him of the type of player he could be. And that's kind of where the Golden State Warriors and other teams that have been mentioned in Kings trades, when you look at Devin Carter, that's kind of where the league is viewing him. And I kind of put him in a similar category to Dolan Connect with the Lakers. Not that his value is that less significant compared to Connect's, where Connect has dropped to like a second round value, second round pick in trade talks. But we just need to see more from these guys. We need to see them on the court, see what kind of player they can become until we really get a grasp of what their value is around the league in trade talks. But when you're dangling a player like Devin Carter in trade talks right now, I don't think that his value is equatable to like a 2028 or 2029 first round pick right now.
Talking to Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. Brett, we've moved past, okay, first it was Devin Carter and it was 2 seconds and Dario Saric. How much do you believe the Kings want Jonathan Kuminga? And the reason I'm asking that is because not too long ago, there were some question marks, and I thought it might be possible, depending on how much the Kings want Jonathan Kuminga, that there is a world where you could be looking at a protected first and Keon. Now, Keon has been protected so far, but how much do you think the Kings want Jonathan Kuminga? And could Keon at any point be put on the table?
Well, that's the ultimate question. How much would the Kings want Jonathan Kuminga? And I think that the Keon Ellis, and it's a long shot, but the Keegan Murray question of how much do you value those guys really plays a factor into your pursuit of Jonathan Kuminga. Because, for example, if you see Keegan Murray as your future, which I truly believe the Kings do, and they're going to offer him an extension, why do you have a need for a player like Jonathan Kuminga then? Why would you crowd your forward spot on the wing? And obviously, if you're going to offer Keon Ellis an extension as well and keep him around, again, why would you need Jonathan Kuminga there and to just kind of lock up your cap books for future years to come? So that's really the main question right now. I don't have an answer to that for you, Allen, of how much they value Keon Ellis to this point. The word is that they do like him, and if they were to make a trade to impact their roster, they probably would have gotten rid of him already at this point, and they probably would have significantly increased their chances of getting a really good player on their roster in Keon Ellis' spot. So just based on kind of reading between the lines and where this roster is at, I don't think that they're going to be offering up Ellis in a trade for Jonathan Kuminga. I think that their max is kind of what we've been reporting of Devin Carter, Dario Saric, and a protected first sometime in September when Dario Saric becomes trade eligible again to be aggregated with other salaries. So that's kind of where we're at with the Kings, and we'll see what happens in this Kuminga situation. It's going to drag on into August. We reported that last week in the middle of July when we were at Summer League that the talk was kind of that this is going to stall out and we're going to go into the dog days of August awaiting an answer. And it really just kind of depends at this point on if there is another sign and trade scenario out there. We know about the Suns. We know about the Kings. The Nets haven't really shown much interest in Jonathan Kuminga. Could they circle back to that if they wanted to? Absolutely. They have the cap space to do so. I just don't see it being an option at this point. Same thing with the Miami Heat. They were rumored to be interested in Kuminga, but they went a different direction. Now they're hard capped at the first apron after trading for Norman Powell. So that's no longer an option right now before the season begins. The only other team that I could really see emerging in this scenario, and it's kind of funny because the Kuminga's camp and the Warriors are both kind of holding out hope on this too, is that the Chicago Bulls revisit this and they're interested in Jonathan Kuminga because they have multiple avenues to get a trade done in a sign and trade scenario. You could send out Ayo Dosunmu, who the Warriors have registered interest in the past. You have Devin Carter on a $6.8 million contract. Jalen Smith is a stretch big man at $9 million. And we've talked about multiple times how the Warriors need a stretch big man. And while they're most likely going to be getting Al Horford once the Kuminga situation gets figured out, adding Jalen Smith may not be a bad idea as well for extra depth there. So there's definitely an avenue to the Bulls getting a deal done. The only problem there is that they're dealing with Josh Giddey's restricted free agency. And until that gets figured out, it's really hard to see them really going in on the Jonathan Kuminga situation with the Warriors.
I got one more for you, Brett, but real quick, when you mentioned the Bulls, it kind of sparked something in me talking to Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. Yeah, what ended up happening with the Kobe White thing? Everybody thought that Kobe White was going to be perfect and he was on everybody's trade market. Then it seems as if quietly the Bulls said, yeah, I think we're going to keep him. He's still on that expiring deal, but it felt like, based on that base year compensation, he's at 12.5. That could have worked out with Kuminga. You just named off about 4 or 5 players on the Bulls and didn't even say Kobe White. Did the Bulls at some point, within league circles say, I think we're going to hold on to Kobe White?
Yeah, before Summer League, it seemed like that he was going to be their main trade asset this offseason, and rightfully so. He had just barely below an all-star level season last year. I think that he really emerged and had his best year in the league with the Bulls and solidified himself as a key building block moving forward, averaging 20 points per game, shooting around 37% from three. So Kobe White, still only 25 years old, he presents a lot of upside next to a main facilitator and ball handler like Josh Giddey moving forward. And the word from Summer League is that the Bulls don't want to trade him, that they just don't see any value right now in giving him up and kind of starting over and backtracking and getting another young player that they would have to develop. They've spent years developing Kobe White, and now they're starting to see what the finished product could look like. He's playing well for them. He's going to be one of the faces of their franchise with Montas Buzelis and Josh Giddey. That's what the hope is right now, and they can continue building this young core out. But they much rather get rid of some of those other guys that are going to be on expiring deals. And Ayo Dosunmu has widely been talked about with multiple teams this offseason. Obviously, Devin Carter has that expiring deal. And then Kevin Huerter is going to be on an expiring $18 million contract as well. So the Bulls are going to have cap space moving forward. They're going to be able to re-sign Josh Giddey and then be able to re-sign Kobe White, assuming that this mindset of keeping him doesn't change. But as of right now, it doesn't seem like that he's on the block at all. All indications that I've been told is that the Bulls want to keep him.
Talking to Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. Brett, okay, now one more for you. And I kind of kicked off the show this way because based on what I read from the Anthony Slater article and the idea that the Kings have pitched, hey, you're going to be a starter, you're going to be a featured piece offensively, which is what Jonathan Kuminga continues to say. I'm doing the math here, Brett, and I'm just not understanding how the Kings are going to do this with specifically DeMar DeRozan on the team, because I just think the other pieces are just not going to move. Let's say the Warriors today, you get off this call and it's breaking news. The Warriors and the Kings agree to a deal with Jonathan Kuminga. They decide, the Warriors say, screw it, we'll take the protected first, Devin Carter and Dario Saric. What in the world would happen to the Kings starting lineup? Because Brett, I believe that there has to be some type of handshake agreement between DeMar DeRozan and the Kings that if they get Kuminga, they'll basically facilitate a way for DeMar to get somewhere, because there's not enough minutes, there's not enough balls on the court. It's just, I don't get it. I don't see it, Brett.
Right, and that's why I don't really see a scenario right now where the Kings will actually get Jonathan Kuminga, because you just create a logjam for yourself, like you said. And the whole thing of getting Kuminga is that he wants to be a starter, he wants to be a featured young player that can grow into an all-star in this league. Well, you're basically going to a lateral situation if you're Kuminga, where you're not going to be in front of Levine, you're not going to be in front of Sabonis, you're not going to be in front of DeRozan. I find it hard to believe that they would value him more than Keegan Murray. So you're still the fourth or fifth guy on this team, just like you are on the Warriors right now. So it doesn't make sense for me if I was Kuminga's agent, or if I was even him, that I would want to go to the Kings unless they were just going through a complete reset and they were going to get rid of some of those guys at the top of the list. Obviously, getting rid of DeMar DeRozan, yeah, that would make a lot of sense if you were going to get Jonathan Kuminga. But who's going to take DeRozan right now? And the answer is no one. There's no team out there this offseason that would want to trade for DeMar DeRozan unless there were assets attached to it. So that's kind of why I circle back to our conversations that we've had before, Allen, where I think that DeMar DeRozan's market is going to open up a little bit more around the trade deadline. And obviously, when you have injuries around the league, you have teams that are going to say, you know what, let's go all in and really try to push for a playoff spot or push for a championship or whatever it be. Especially in the Eastern Conference, I think that there would be teams that would be interested in DeMar DeRozan, who doesn't have much time left in this league and doesn't have much left on his contract. So there's definitely more avenues to doing so in terms of trading DeMar DeRozan at the trade deadline than there are right now. It's just the trade market as a whole is pretty much dead at this point. There's not much activity. There's not teams actively discussing deals right now. It's just more so the talks that we've reported and talks that you hear of trade rumors are just feelers at this point, and mainly to set up from a few months from now when we have the trade deadline of what kind of value you can get for player A, B, and C, and really teams doing their due diligence of what their roster looks like heading into training camp.
Brett Siegel, national NBA insider and reporter for Clutch Points. Brett, thank you so much, man. Great job as always. Thank you for all the information, and we will talk to you again soon.
No problem, Allen. You have a great weekend.
Same to you, my guy. That was Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. Brett always has a lot of great information for us. And